So, first of all, can you tell me how many planets in total there are in Zeta Reticuli?
I have not counted them personally, but there are many.
More
The
than 10?
larger area, yes,
More than 10?
yes,
Okay.
at least 12 what I'm aware of. But again, it depends how far you reach out. There are at least 100 planets that are somewhat related to this culture from there, but it's likely not in the star system per se.
Okay. Um, so do the planets orbit the two stars like an infinity symbol, or does each star have its own set of planets orbiting it?
From where I'm looking at, it's two stars with planets orbiting around them, but again, there are also smaller stars that are located somewhere in distance that also have planets rotating around them. But I don't think there's anything that you would consider what you just shared, which is the case in some other systems.
Okay. So, did your overall Zeta Ray species evolve naturally, or were you engineered by some other species?
From what we have been taught, we have been engineered. But there was also some self-engineering on our part. We took what we were given and worked on that. Again, we are not androids, what we were created.
So, do you know who created you?
That is a great mystery. There are different stories to that. It was likely also other human beings.
Okay.
Many have claimed to be our creators, and there are different mythologies and names too. That the most common is a human creation, but I'm aware there are also reptiles, not a much different looking creature that claim that they have constructed us.
Okay. Um, so do all races in the Zeta Ray species have a hive mind, or do some have other types of governments?
Most over here have what you would consider perhaps a hive mind, but mostly the top of our government has always been an outside race or species. We have rarely been self-governed, and when we have, it's usually a more collective, perhaps what you would call a hive mind, yes. We don't have one or two leaders, usually it's someone else in control, but we are usually telepathically on the same wavelength, so to speak.
Okay. Uh, just I'm just asking out of curiosity, but are you allowed to say which species or whatever is in charge of your your species now?
Currently, there's reptiles that are in charge, but there is just a certain group that you call Zeta Cray. That's just a name that I'm very perhaps people on your world use. But there are other groups that are in charge of that are under the control. I cannot share much more at this point.
Right, I understand. Um, so can you tell me a little bit about some of the other life forms that exist in Zeta Reticuli?
Well, there are other human groups for certain that have come there and that have made certain experiments and created, for example, our people to some degree. And some of them are still there. They are physical, they are beings in non-physical arenas. They are beings in other dimensionalities. You could perhaps consider angelic if you wish, or other words, or nature spirits or whatever, that in crystal beings that inhabit those regions. Then, of course, there are some of the reptiles that are perhaps more like envoys that come back and forth. Some have outposts installed, like, for example, some of your cultures when you plan to install outposts in other cultures, like an embassy, or more than that, perhaps a colony. And then there are other colonies that are next to them, and it's something like a rivalry also over a group, like in the African continent, for example,
Okay,
like the Chinese, for example.
right. So are there any species that are native to Zeta Reticuli that have achieved space travel?
Well, we are in one way or the other native to Zeta Reticuli. We've been engineered there, so we have space travel, yes.
Okay. Are there any other species besides you?
Yes, well, what you consider space travel depends greatly that crystal beings can jump planets without needing to have physical vehicles. The reptiles that come and go obviously have space travel, otherwise they couldn't come and go. And at least one of the human groups, there are several, have the capacity that developed them recently.
Okay. What do these crystal beings look like? I mean, do they have arms and legs, and do they walk around, or are they just solid crystals?
They are not solid, but they've, well, I don't know a better word than crystal being. They are entirely physical. They look like what you would term crystals.
Okay.
They are more like columns.
Hmm. So do they have arms and legs?
No, they have some form of appendages, but not like you consider them arms and legs.
Okay. Interesting. Uh, so what is?
Perhaps consider them wings like a butterfly.
Okay. What is the largest species in Zeta Reticuli?
Perhaps some of the reptiles that come and go are fairly large in terms of intelligent life, but they're also beings you would likely relegate to the animal kingdom, but they're also reptilian nature, but are quite large. They are in the seas of some planets.
Okay.
Some of your dinosaurs might remind you of them.
Well, speaking of dinosaurs, were there ever, or are there still any large reptiles in the star system that roam around on land that look like dinosaurs?
If you're referring to our star system,
Yes.
there are certainly some beings in the sea that are just shared, yes. On land, not so large ones, but smaller ones of a reptilian nature. You can tolerate if you want to.
Okay.
Not like any of your dinosaurs on Earth, but beings of reptilian nature, larger. Perhaps reminding you a little bit of a Komodo varan, Komodo dragon. Some are bigger, they might remind you of some of your mythological creatures, but they don't look exactly like one particular dinosaur race on your planet has.
Right. Right. Now, can you please tell me about the general history of Zeta Reticuli and your species, in terms of the events that you think are most important or most interesting?
Well, most interesting is certainly our creation, from my understanding. There were beings before here, the humans that I referred to earlier on, but that's just something that I can relate from them. I'm not aware of that. Our creation certainly had a certain impact in their culture. First, we were more like a robot originally. Some of us were also affected by certain form of degeneration as they used their own genetics to design us, and they were tampering around similar to what happened on your planet, but obviously less successful. Hence, us unfortunately degenerating to the degree that we were not a self-sustaining civilization. It never got to that level of, for example, developing art form or culture the way you understand it. However, there was one point where we lost a large part of our group that were deemed unsuccessful. That was perhaps caused some dismay. It was certainly an important event. Some were also deactivated or rather put in a more robotic state of mind.
What was this event where a lot of your people were lost?
That was certainly an extreme was considered no longer important by our creators, and also another group that was sent off to certain reptilian entities that did their own experiments that they conducted. We never saw them again, so we aren't quite certain. But we're also aware we collaborated with those same groups at other times, what you call this.
Okay.
Again, I'm just referring here to records. I have not been physically present by any of those.
Okay. So, did the Zeta Rays have any involvement at all in the Orion Wars, or did you evolve afterwards?
We were used in those wars on both sides.
Okay. Um, now
We
you.
are a different set of consciousness at that time.
Okay. You said before that you're able to travel faster than light speed. I mean, can you tell me in general how you do this? Do you just use a system of wormholes, or do your ships literally travel through space faster than the speed of light?
They teleport, yes, that's correct. It not as always is through what you consider a wormhole, but its principle is perhaps easier to understand, so yes.
Okay. Um, so how are your hybrid programs working out overall? I mean, do you consider them to be successful in solving your genetic challenges?
Personally, I'm not quite satisfied, but also not completely dissatisfied, but there's still great problems. There needs to be a solution if there should be a maintaining of the general species, but likely there will be simply a replacement with something else. But it's also due to the ones that are manipulating our genetic and manipulating your genetic and pairing them up and using them for certain experiments.
Okay,
We have no full control of that experiment currently.
right. So, do you just collect DNA from humans on Earth, or do you also use it from humans on other planets or from other species entirely?
We use this from different species and races all over the cosmos to see what works best, and some is compatible and others is not.
Okay. Um, well, the final question that I have for you today, what do what do you personally hope for yourself and your species in the future? What are your dreams and goals?
I personally wish for survival, at least, and my consciousness somehow reincarnate either in a new race and species that follows this one, or perhaps be able to be transferred right from one body to the other if it's necessary. We are currently struggling with our survival after all, and the reptiles have also given us a lot of information about that. Those that are currently running the show, so to speak, of how to accomplish that and what we need to change, and I hope that will be successful. But also for us to become more independent if possible. But currently our survival is at stake, so that's where the main focus of everybody lies. But
Right.
I know that everyone will play out to the inevitable consequence. We are perhaps more what you might consider fatalists in this regard, as the reptiles are more or less in control of this particular branch that I belong on. They will do whatever they see fit.
Right.